She didn't die the night she disappeared. She died in the moments no one saw. What happened to 19-year-old Avery Colton in those final 18 minutes? After her phone went silent, after her footsteps stopped, and after every person she trusted became a suspect. Because by the end of this story, you'll discover that Avery wasn't just betrayed once. She was betrayed by everyone closest to her. And the person who delivered the final blow? They were part of the investigation from the very beginning. But the truth, Avery's truth, was hidden in one final message she left behind, a message that someone never wanted you to see. Welcome to Night Crime Stories Hub. Thanks to all my viewers and subscribers for your support. Stay tuned for daily true crime updates. Don't forget to subscribe. The night Avery Colton disappeared began like hundreds before it. Quiet, predictable, almost painfully ordinary. She left the campus library just after 11:47 p.m. A worn hoodie pulled tight around her shoulders as she stepped into the chilled November air. Avery was the kind of girl who liked routine. Same study spot, same walking path, same soft hum she made under her breath when she was anxious. That night, students later said, she seemed distracted, glancing repeatedly at her phone as if waiting for a message she already dreaded receiving. Her route home led through a dim intersection the campus police often ignored. One flickering streetlight buzzed overhead, casting long, trembling shadows across the pavement. At 11:58 p.m., Avery's phone stopped transmitting location data, freezing on that very corner, an abrupt dead signal that technicians later described as unnaturally clean, as though someone had forced it offline. When Avery didn't return to her dorm, her roommate assumed she'd crashed at a friend's place. But by morning, concern rippled through the residence hall. Detectives were called in shortly after noon, and by early afternoon they were walking the path Avery should have taken, tracing her final known steps. Everything looked undisturbed, until one officer noticed a backpack sitting upright beside a cracked wooden bench. It was Avery's, neatly placed, not dropped, not tossed, almost positioned. Inside, her notes were stacked perfectly, her water bottle was full, and her keycard was zipped into the front pouch. But something was missing, her phone. Detectives exchanged uneasy glances. Victims didn't leave their essentials behind. Perpetrators rarely arranged belongings so politely. A 911 call had come in around midnight, logged only as suspicious interaction. The caller refused to give a name but claimed they saw a girl matching the description, talking to someone near the intersection. When dispatchers asked for more details, the caller abruptly hung up. Multiple callbacks went unanswered. By early evening, investigators located a convenience store camera facing the general area. They expected to see Avery walking alone. Instead, the footage captured her stopping, turning, speaking to someone who stepped into frame only briefly. The figure stood inches from her, body angled as if shielding their face from the lens. When detectives zoomed in, the truth hit them hard. The face beside Avery wasn't just obscured, it had been deliberately blurred. Someone had tampered with the footage, and they'd done it fast. The team froze, realizing this wasn't a random disappearance. It was calculated, and the person Avery met that night didn't want to be found. Detectives replayed the tampered footage again and again, hoping a new detail would reveal itself, but the blurred figure beside Avery stayed stubbornly unrecognizable. The only clear thing was movement. The stranger wasn't simply passing by. They followed her, 2 full blocks, maintaining a careful distance, closing in only when Avery paused to check her phone. The pattern looked intentional, not impulsive. The investigative team returned to the dorms just after sunrise, determined to dig deeper into Avery's final hours. Lila Hart, still in last night's sweatshirt and visibly shaking, opened the door to their shared room. Her eyes immediately darted to Avery's neatly made bed, untouched since the night she vanished. The sight alone made her voice crack. "I knew something was wrong," Lila whispered, sinking onto her mattress. She kept getting messages. Weird ones. Anonymous. She paused before adding, "She deleted most of them." Detectives leaned in. "What kind of messages?" "Short, Unsettling, Lila replied. Like someone trying to corner her without saying anything outright. She hesitated before admitting she had urged Avery to report them. But Avery brushed it off, insisting it was nothing she couldn't handle. Lila's guilt weighed heavy. The moment she said the words, her shoulders collapsed inward. A digital forensics team arrived minutes later to search Avery's laptop and cloud records. While most of the mysterious messages were gone, one remained, a final text preserved automatically by a synced backup. "We need to talk. Tonight." The tone was cold, stripped of context, the kind of message that could mean confrontation or confession. Detectives exchanged looks. The timing matched almost exactly with Avery leaving the library. Lila shifted uncomfortably as they questioned her further. "She didn't tell me much," she said. But she'd been different, nervous, distracted, like she was carrying something heavy and didn't know how to put it down. Lila's voice dropped to a whisper. "She had a secret, something big, and she never told me what it was." The investigation tightened around that final message. Who had sent it? And why did Avery agree to meet them alone at night? When phone records finally came in, the answer chilled the room. The text didn't come from an unknown number or an off-campus location. It originated from inside Avery's own dorm building. Not only that, it came from a device registered to someone she knew personally. The detectives suddenly realized the stranger Avery met in the dark might not have been a stranger at all. The revelation that the final message came from inside Avery's dorm sent investigators scrambling back into digital forensics. If someone close to her had asked for a secret meeting, then Avery's devices, especially her cloud backup, might hold the truth she never shared. A specialist worked late into the night, combing through corrupted files and encrypted folders Avery had tried to hide. At 2:14 a.m., he found something the team didn't expect. A series of deleted voice notes Avery recorded in the weeks leading up to her disappearance. The first note crackled with static before Avery's voice broke through. Soft, shaky, unsteady. "I think someone's watching me," she whispered. "I keep seeing the same car, same corner, same time." She paused, breathing hard. "Maybe it's nothing. Maybe I'm overthinking. But it feels wrong. Like I can't escape it." Another recording captured her frustration. "I shouldn't have gotten involved," she muttered. "I made a mistake months ago, and now I'm paying for it. I knew this would come back." Her voice wavered. "I wish I had told someone. Anyone." The investigators exchanged looks. What mistake? What involvement? Avery had been portrayed as quiet, disciplined, predictable. Yet here she sounded like someone carrying a secret heavy enough to crush her. The next note shattered that image completely. It began with Avery crying. Quiet, controlled, but unmistakably terrified. Then another voice entered the recording. A male voice, low, sharp, whispered inches from the microphone. "You think you can walk away from this?" It hissed. "You think you can just forget?" Avery gasped. The sound of a scuffle followed, a door slamming, then footsteps pounding away. The note abruptly cut off, as if someone snatched the phone from her hand. No one in the room breathed for several seconds. They rewound it again and again. Every detail mattered, the accent, the cadence, the tone. But the voice was too short, too distorted to identify. Still, one thing was certain. Avery hadn't been imagining danger. It had been real, close, intimate. By sunrise, investigators had begun compiling a list of every man connected to Avery. Classmates, professors, co-workers, neighbors, friends. Anyone who might sound like the whisperer. Anyone who had access to her. While the team canvassed Avery's building, a neighbor across the hall nervously approached them. Her voice trembled as she described hearing raised voices the night before Avery vanished. Avery's voice and a man's. Not arguing like strangers, arguing like people with history. When detectives asked her to identify the man she heard, she didn't hesitate. She recognized him. The neighbor's identification gave investigators their first real lead. The man she claimed to have heard arguing with Avery was someone the detectives had not yet encountered. A name that had never appeared in Avery's social media, text logs, or friend circles. His name was Noah Ridge, a second-year engineering student with top grades, a quiet reputation, and, according to the neighbor, a voice that matched the heated exchange from the previous night. When detectives located Noah on campus, he appeared calm, almost too calm. He answered the door with a polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. His dorm room was immaculate, the kind of tidy that felt practiced rather than natural. He raised his brows in feigned confusion when they asked about Avery. Avery?
Yep.
I know her, he said slowly. We're friends. But the more they pressed, the more cracks appeared in his composure. His gaze flickered, his fingers tapped restlessly against his thigh, and his knee bounced with barely restrained tension. Finally, when confronted with the neighbor's statement, he exhaled shakily and dropped the act. Fine, he muttered. We were dating. Happy now. Detectives asked why Avery had kept their relationship hidden, and Noah answered without hesitation. Avery liked keeping things quiet. She didn't want drama. She didn't want people talking. His defensiveness lingered in the air like smoke. One of the investigators noticed something else, faint bruises along the ridge of Noah's knuckles. When questioned, Noah quickly shoved his hands into his pockets. I work on machines, he snapped. It happens. But a forensics officer later noted the injuries looked less like accidental scrapes and more like impact trauma. Punching something or someone. Noah maintained he had nothing to do with Avery's disappearance and insisted he hadn't seen her the night she vanished. He said he'd been studying with friends, though he failed to provide their names. His alibi wobbled under even mild questioning. Then detectives pulled out the footage. A campus camera positioned several blocks from Avery's last known location had captured Noah at 11:52 p.m., walking quickly, scanning the street repeatedly. Just minutes before Avery's phone went dark. The footage drained the color from the room. Noah stared at the image, his throat bobbing as he swallowed hard. His denial evaporated. His breathing quickened. He finally sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. When he spoke again, his voice was hoarse, almost defeated. I wasn't the only one she was seeing. Noah's confession shattered the investigators' entire understanding of Avery's private life. If she had been involved with more than one man, secretly, then the web surrounding her disappearance was more tangled than anyone realized. When pressed about who the other man was, Noah hesitated, jaw tightening as if speaking the name tasted bitter. It was Ethan, he finally said. Ethan Lowe, her academic advisor. The room froze. Ethan wasn't some random classmate. He was a respected university mentor, a man in his mid-30s with a polished reputation and a carefully managed persona. The idea that he could be romantically entangled with a 19-year-old student was not only inappropriate, it was dangerous. Investigators immediately pulled Ethan's email records. What they found confirmed Noah's claim. The messages between Avery and Ethan were unusually personal, warm, handwritten-style paragraphs disguised beneath academic pleasantries. Late-night emails discussing life choices, regrets, and promises of guidance that no advisor should offer. The subtext suggested emotional dependency, maybe even obsession. Some exchanges made the team uneasy. I know you're scared. I'll help you, but you need to trust me completely. Don't tell anyone about our conversations. Not yet. Ethan had never reported this closeness to the school. Avery hadn't either. Their relationship existed in shadows. When detectives brought Ethan in for questioning, he arrived composed, dressed neatly, posture perfect. He appeared more concerned with how the situation reflected on him than with Avery's safety. He denied any romantic involvement but admitted they were close. Avery confided in me, he said smoothly. She was overwhelmed, scared. I was trying to help her escape a dangerous situation. What situation? Investigators asked. Ethan's eyes flickered. Just a split second, but enough to betray him. I can't say, he murmured. It's confidential. Noah, however, had no hesitation filling the silence. According to him, Avery had been planning to come forward to the university, accusing Ethan of manipulation and emotional boundary violations. Noah claimed she feared Ethan's reaction, that he wouldn't let her walk away without consequences. The revelation shifted the investigation again. If Avery was preparing to expose Ethan, he had motive. But so did Noah, whose jealousy and temper were already documented. And with both men lying or withholding something, the truth seemed buried beneath their conflicting stories. As detectives returned to physical evidence, they reviewed Avery's backpack, found carefully placed beside the bench. Under ultraviolet scanning, a partial fingerprint emerged on the zipper. It was clean, distinct, impossible to overlook. When the system matched it, the room fell silent. The print didn't belong to Noah or Ethan. It belonged to Lila, Avery's roommate. The fingerprint shook the investigation to its core. Lila Hart, the tearful roommate who had begged detectives to find Avery, was now tied to evidence left at the scene. When questioned, Lila clutched her sleeves and insisted the print meant nothing. "I touched the backpack earlier that day," she said. "I was looking for her. She left without telling me." But the timeline didn't align. Avery's belongings were accounted for during morning rounds, long before Lila claimed she checked. Detectives exchanged uneasy glances. A digital search of Lila's deleted chats painted a darker picture. Page after page revealed spikes of jealousy, late-night rants about Avery lying, and spiraling paranoia. Lila seemed convinced Avery was hiding things from her, secrets she felt entitled to know. One message read, "She thinks she can walk away from everyone. I won't let her shut me out." Then came the receipt. 2 days before Avery vanished, Lila purchased gloves, tape, and cleaning wipes from a hardware store off campus. When confronted, Lila went pale. "They weren't for Avery," she cried. "I was helping a friend move." But no such friend appeared in her records. No texts, no calls, nothing. Detectives pressed harder. Lila's hands trembled. Her voice cracked. She alternated between anger and fear, insisting she loved Avery, insisting she would never hurt her. Yet every new detail pointed toward a dangerous obsession. Lila hadn't just been a friend. She'd been watching, monitoring, waiting. While combing through campus financial logs, investigators found something else. A storage unit rented under a variation of Lila's name. She hadn't mentioned it. She hadn't visited it in months, until the morning after Avery disappeared. A search warrant was issued. When the unit door rolled open, the stale air hit the team first, followed by the sight that made every stomach drop. On a metal shelf sat Avery's missing jacket, folded, undisturbed, and stained with blood. The sight froze the investigators in place. It wasn't tossed or hidden. It was presented, as though someone had returned to it repeatedly. A faint, chemical scent lingered, bleach, mixed with something metallic. One detective crouched, examining the edges of the stain. It hadn't fully dried when it was placed there. Lila, brought to the scene minutes later, collapsed at the threshold. She shook her head violently. "No," she whispered, voice thinning. "That wasn't there before. Someone's framing me." Detectives watched her carefully. Her panic seemed real, but so had her jealousy. So had her lies. And now, her secret storage unit held evidence soaked in Avery's blood. But another question formed. If Lila had the jacket, where was everything else Avery had been wearing? The discovery of the storage unit hit the investigation like a tidal wave, carrying every assumption from the previous chapter into deeper, darker water. Detectives stood in the dim, concrete space staring at Avery's blood-stained jacket draped over a cracked plastic bin. The same jacket she wore the night she vanished. The same jacket everyone believed would confirm the worst. But as they processed the scene, something immediately felt off. The blood pattern was inconsistent. Smeared rather than splattered, old rather than fresh. Still, the evidence was overwhelming enough to force detectives to treat the unit as a potential crime scene. When the full contents were cataloged, duct tape, cleaning supplies, and a shattered phone screen, the questions multiplied. Why would Lila, Avery's roommate, have these items? Why hide them? Why lie about never having a storage unit at all? Detectives sent the jacket for immediate DNA analysis, preparing themselves for the possibility they now had Avery's blood in hand. But when the results came back, the entire investigation shifted. The blood wasn't Avery's. The test revealed the blood belonged to an unidentified female. That revelation cracked open a new branch of uncertainty. If the blood wasn't Avery's, then whose was it, and why was her jacket covered in it? News of the storage unit reached Noah first. Detectives found him pale, sweating, and pacing as if waiting for the world to collapse around him. He insisted he had nothing to do with the unit and claimed Lila had been obsessed with him, calling, showing up unexpectedly, making comments about Avery not deserving him. He swore she had always hated Avery, especially during the weeks leading up to her disappearance. According to Noah, Lila had once said, "When Avery's out of the picture, everything will make sense." But even as Noah painted Lila as unstable, another voice emerged with a different story. Ethan Lowe. He arrived unannounced at the station, face ashen, hands trembling. He confessed he knew something detectives hadn't yet uncovered. Lila and Noah had been meeting in secret for months, not just casual hangouts. Emotionally charged, private conversations filled with complaints about Avery, frustrations, and plans to intervene in her life. Ethan claimed he once overheard Lila telling Noah, "Avery listens to you too much. That has to change." This revelation shattered the image of Lila as merely jealous or insecure. It suggested coordination. It suggested motive. And it made the hidden blood-stained jacket feel like a warning rather than a clue. Just as detectives prepared to bring Lila back in, a new piece of evidence surfaced. A previously overlooked CCTV angle from a building across campus. In the footage, Avery is seen walking calmly down the sidewalk, then willingly getting into a car driven by someone investigators never suspected. The newly uncovered CCTV footage from the previous chapter rewrote everything the investigators believed they knew. Avery, appearing calm and unforced, stepped into a vehicle no one had thought to examine. When detectives zoomed in on the license plate, they were hit with another surprise. The car belonged to Mason Hale, a campus security intern assigned to the nightly safety patrols near Avery's dorm. He was the sort of person everyone saw but no one truly noticed. Polite, quiet, and consistently invisible in the background of campus life. Detectives brought Mason in immediately. Sitting stiffly in the interrogation room, he looked more confused than frightened. When shown the footage, he didn't deny it. Instead, he sighed, rubbed his palms together, and said softly, "Yeah. She asked me for a ride. I didn't think it would matter." Mason explained he often saw Avery walking late at night and had offered rides before, always in an official capacity. But that night, something was different. Avery flagged him down herself, out of breath, eyes wide, constantly checking her phone as if expecting it to ring or explode. Mason recalled her voice shaking when she asked him not to radio it in, not to log the interaction, and not to tell anyone she'd been with him. When detectives asked whether she said why, Mason shook his head. "All she told me was that someone was following her," he said. "She didn't give a name, just kept saying she needed to get away." The GPS data from Mason's patrol car corroborated most of his story, except for where he dropped her off. He didn't bring Avery anywhere near her dorm or her usual study spots. Instead, the coordinates pointed to a long-abandoned university greenhouse on the far edge of campus property. Overgrown, locked for years, forgotten by most students. It was the last place anyone would expect Avery to willingly go. Mason shifted uncomfortably when questioned about it. "She told me to take her there," he insisted. "She said she was meeting someone she trusted, someone who could protect her. I asked if she wanted me to stay with her, but she said no." She looked desperate. Before leaving the car, Mason claimed Avery grabbed his arm and whispered, "Please, don't tell anyone I was here." Then she ran toward the greenhouse without looking back. Detectives, now armed with a new direction, headed straight to the site. The air inside the greenhouse was thick with humidity and rot, vines twisting along shattered panes. As they searched the soil near a collapsed planting table, one officer's glove brushed against something hard. Avery's phone, buried beneath the dirt. The discovery of Avery's phone buried beneath the soil inside the greenhouse sent a tremor through the investigation. Forensics immediately rushed the device to the lab, determined to extract whatever fragments of her final moments remained. Coming directly on the heels of Mason's shocking revelation, detectives hoped the phone would fill the gaps in the mysterious timeline surrounding Avery's disappearance. Using layered data reconstruction, technicians pieced together the phone's last recorded activities. The results were chilling. Avery hadn't simply wandered into the greenhouse. She had circled it multiple times. Her footsteps, reconstructed from motion sensors and audio cues, traced a frantic, looping pattern around the structure. Each pass grew shorter and closer to the entrance, as if she was gathering the courage to face someone, or desperately trying to avoid them. The final 18 minutes were the most disturbing. A faint audio file, automatically saved when her phone detected rapid movement, captured the soft rustle of leaves, followed by Avery's trembling whisper, "Please, don't do this." The words were barely audible, strained by fear. Seconds later came the unmistakable sounds of a struggle. A gasp, footsteps scraping against concrete, and something heavy hitting the ground. Then silence. The timeline placed the struggle precisely at 12:17 a.m., the moment Avery's phone stopped transmitting anything at all. Investigators immediately cross-checked the timestamp with every known person connected to Avery. Noah Ridge was confirmed to be in his dorm, arguing with his roommate about an overdue project. Lila Hart was caught on dorm hallway cameras pacing back and forth during a security sweep. Ethan Lowe had been at a faculty dinner captured on restaurant security footage. Mason Hale had returned to campus for his patrol, and his GPS verified he never left the main grounds after dropping Avery off. For the first time since the investigation began, all 4 of the primary suspects had airtight alibis. But someone had been at the greenhouse. Someone who knew Avery well enough that she believed they could protect her. Someone whose presence she didn't question, until it was too late. When the digital forensics team pulled the final location report from Avery's phone, the detectives crowded around the screen. A single device had been pinged near the greenhouse at 12:17 a.m., within 15 feet of Avery's last known position. Not Noah, not Lila, not Ethan, not Mason. The name that appeared on the report hit the room like a blow. Harper Colton, Avery's older sister, the girl who publicly mourned her, the girl who claimed she hadn't spoken to Avery the entire night she disappeared. Detectives stared at the screen in stunned silence, because Harper had never once mentioned being anywhere near the greenhouse. And now, she was the last person tied to Avery's final minutes. Harper Colton's name on the location data changed everything. Detectives, still reeling from the revelation, brought her in under the guise of a follow-up interview. Harper arrived exhausted, her eyes rimmed with sleeplessness, a stark contrast to the calm, composed sister who had spoken so gracefully at the campus vigil. When investigators confronted her with the coordinates placing her at the greenhouse the exact moment Avery's phone recorded the struggle, Harper's composure cracked instantly. Her hands trembled as she pressed them to her face, shoulders collapsing inward. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," she whispered. It was the first fracture in the wall she had built, and detectives wasted no time pushing. Within minutes, the story unraveled. Harper admitted Avery had confronted her 2 nights before she disappeared. Avery had discovered that Harper had been quietly siphoning money from their late mother's memorial charity, a fund created to help struggling students. Harper insisted the theft wasn't malicious, it was desperation. She was drowning financially, months behind on bills, and terrified of losing everything. But Avery, guided by her strict morals, threatened to expose the truth unless Harper returned every dollar. Harper had begged for time. Avery refused. Detectives listened as Harper described spiraling panic. Fear of public shame, fear of prison, fear of being seen as a failure. She claimed she went to the greenhouse only to talk, believing Avery might calm down away from the campus chaos. But Avery was already frightened, already suspicious of everyone around her. According to Harper, the argument escalated quickly. Avery tried to leave, Harper grabbed her arm, and the 2 sisters struggled in the dark. "I just wanted to stop her from walking away," Harper sobbed. She tripped. She fell. "I swear I never meant to hurt her." Psychological profiling painted a more complicated picture. Harper had long felt overshadowed by Avery's success. Avery was the golden child, top grades, scholarships, admired by everyone. Harper, always older yet somehow always behind, harbored years of suppressed resentment she never acknowledged aloud. Experts believe the mixture of guilt, fear, and festering jealousy created a pressure cooker inside Harper's mind, one that finally erupted in the greenhouse. Detectives believed they finally had the full narrative. A sister's desperation turned deadly, a hidden financial scandal, a confrontation fueled by emotional fractures dating back years. But just as they prepared to finalize charges, the forensic team requested an urgent meeting. Avery's fatal injury, the blunt force trauma that ended her life, did not match Harper's description of the struggle. The angle, the force, the pattern, none of it aligned with a simple fall. Someone else had been in that greenhouse, someone Harper never mentioned. The revelation that Avery's fatal wound didn't match Harper's story sent a cold wave through the investigation. Detectives, already exhausted from weeks of conflicting narratives, returned to the greenhouse crime scene with renewed urgency. Harper's confession no longer closed the case. It cracked it wide open. If Avery's death wasn't caused by the fall Harper described, then someone else had been there, someone who arrived after Harper fled in panic. Forensic analysts worked tirelessly through the night, digging deeper into the soil beneath the broken floorboards. Beneath layers of disturbed earth, they found what Harper failed to mention: evidence that Avery had regained consciousness after the initial struggle. Blood droplets were spaced irregularly, indicating movement, staggered steps, hesitation, a desperate attempt to escape. Avery hadn't died immediately. She had tried to seek help. That discovery changed everything. A few meters deeper into the greenhouse tunnels, investigators uncovered a second set of footprints, larger, heavier, fresh despite the days that had passed. The impressions suggested someone moving with purpose, not panic. Someone who knew the layout well enough to navigate the shadows without stumbling. These prints led toward an underground service corridor rarely used since the facility was abandoned. When the prints were digitally analyzed and compared to prints previously recorded during the investigation, the match came back fast and unmistakable. They belonged to someone who had been in and out of the case from the beginning. Someone who volunteered information, answered questions, and appeared helpful, even sympathetic. The revelation unsettled everyone in the room. Even more damning was the pattern of Avery's fatal injury. It was a precise strike, delivered with calculated force, nothing accidental or impulsive. Whoever dealt the final blow had purpose, intent. And unlike Harper's panicked confession, the second assailant's actions were neither emotional nor desperate. They were clinical. Detectives reviewed body cam footage from the night Avery's belongings were found. One individual lingered longer than the others, offering just the right amount of concern, just the right amount of cooperation. Someone who blended into the investigation so effectively that no one questioned his presence. But the final confirmation came from a new piece of evidence uncovered near the corner of the greenhouse tunnel. A scrap of torn fabric, snagged on a rusty nail. The fibers were tested immediately. When the results came back, every person in the command center went silent. The material matched the uniform worn by only one person connected to the case. The navy blue campus security intern attire belonging to Mason Hale. The moment Mason Hale's uniform fiber was confirmed, detectives brought him in before dawn. He arrived looking bewildered, attempting confusion, but the facade fractured the second they confronted him with the greenhouse evidence. Mason's breathing quickened. His hands fidgeted, tapping anxiously against the metal table. Then, as if rehearsed, he slipped into a calm, measured tone, insisting he had followed Avery only because she was scared, and he wanted to protect her. But investigators had already pulled the footage from his dorm building's internal CCTV. Footage Mason never knew existed. What they found wasn't a protector. It was a predator. The walls of Mason's small dorm room were plastered with photos of Avery taken without her knowledge. Studying alone, walking across campus, leaving class, even sitting by her window at night. A box beneath his bed held personal items. Hair ties, notes, pens, objects Avery likely thought she'd simply misplaced. When confronted with the images, Mason's expression shifted from denial to a chilling, detached honesty. She needed someone who understood her, he muttered. Everyone else was lying to her, using her. His fixation had twisted into obsession long before Avery ever realized she was being watched. Detectives pressed him on the night of her disappearance. Mason claimed he did drop Avery at the greenhouse, just as the GPS showed, but confessed he hadn't driven away. He lingered, watching her silhouette through the cracked glass. When he saw another figure rush her, Harper, his distorted sense of devotion snapped into action. He followed them quietly, remaining hidden in the shadows as the sisters argued. Harper's confession had been partially true. She did injure Avery in panic, but she fled before the fatal moment. Avery was alive, crawling toward the exit, gasping for breath. And that was when Mason stepped out. "She reached for me?" Mason whispered, eyes unfocused, as if trapped in the memory. "But when I tried to help her, she pushed me away. She didn't understand how much I loved her." The choice he made next redefined the entire investigation. Mason knelt beside Avery, lifted the object later identified as the murder weapon, and delivered the blow that ended her life. Cold, deliberate, possessive, a culmination of betrayal from every direction. Family fractures, romantic manipulation, toxic friendships, and finally, a hidden predator masquerading as a guardian. As investigators prepared the final report, they uncovered archival greenhouse footage previously overlooked. In the blurred corner, Avery can be seen writing a small note moments before the attack. She scrawls a single name, the one person she feared most. But the video cuts off before the name is shown. If this case kept you captivated, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. We upload new crime case videos every night. Until then, stay alert, stay aware.